Meteorologist Casey Cloud jumping in right now on this Thursday evening with a severe thunderstorm warning for the Lake City area there to about 7:30. Some damaging winds, maybe some hail there, possible right around Lake City there in Columbia County. It looks like there about 6:53. A severe thunderstorm was located near Winfield or near White Springs, moving east about 15 miles an hour. Lake City, 5 Points, Watertown, Winfield, 20 Valley under the severe thunderstorm warning. I know the worst of this headed right there in towards some pretty busy areas. So as we go ahead and zoom in, the wind on here is not overwhelming, but this is, a pattern here where I know we're getting, pretty late. It's not, the end by any stretch, but we're later in toward these storms here in terms of the summertime pattern. In that, I mean, not just even late in the day, but just in terms of the overall timeline within the months here. I mean, you start having these around May, and then August, and then maybe September, give or take, we start to have this wrap on up. But we have these storms pop up many days of the summertime frame. So we're watching here right now around I-75, around I-10 there. Definitely some very heavy downpours, and this is still disruptive, even if we don't have the damaging winds or the hail. I know we had a hail signature pop up for a moment on here, and that kind of indicated a stronger system. Even if we didn't have hail to an inch like our system was saying, it indicated a stronger cluster and a thunderstorm activity, a stronger updraft here. And I know penny-sized hail is what the Weather Service is going with. I mean, our system, will overestimate. So if it's on an inch for a moment, I mean, we may have got close to that, but probably just under that there. And I'll see our hail tracker here as these pop-up storms happen so quick. I mean, the warning was this 10 minutes ago. This isn't like, in the winter time where we have like a tornado situation, here locally, or maybe it's in a line, or we have damaging winds here in a line, something like that, in the spring, something to that effect, where it can take a little bit, not always. I mean, we have tornadoes that pop up really quick sometimes in the winter, but sometimes it takes a little bit more to mature. By the time the warning comes out, it's almost at its peak here, and it starts to fall off a lot of times. And that's what I'm seeing right here as I'm looking through something. The hail signatures come down pretty significantly here already. I mean, this is just outside, of the more populated areas out here where we had algorithmic signature about an inch on the hail. But now it's kind of getting closer towards some more populated areas here, as we're looking right toward Lake City itself. But even if we don't have the, nasty characteristics in terms of the wind, hail, definitely some lightning, heavy rain coming in. So that's just a storyline, coming right into Lake City. This is some heavier rain for them. Let me check the hour rainfall total on this. I've seen about an inch here to the west, but this has been gathering strength here. So could get a couple inches in Lake City. Hopefully it moves quick enough we don't have to have a flash flood warning or anything like that. But let me kind of get a loop together. That's on the Moody radar here. I'm going to load some different frames on in. You'll kind of get an idea of what we're talking about here as this has developed pretty rapidly. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here on this mode as the loop is ready. So here you go. You can kind of see there some of that heavier action coming right in there, popping up, organizing, boundaries interacting and the like here, and then getting going pretty quickly here in central Columbia County. So again, this isn't overwhelming. This is not a tornado situation. This is a very marginal severe warning, quite honestly. It was more impressive. This is how it is. And one reason I've kind of been going on maybe for a little bit less of these severe thunderstorm warnings, last couple summers, is just that sometimes by the time the warning comes out, they're already at their peak. And, we get on 3 minutes later, something like that. And by then, the worst has already happened. I mean, that's just how it is in this pattern here. But it's not always like that. Sometimes these really significant severe thunderstorms in the summer that really cause, the damage that's a little more noteworthy here. They can take a little bit longer to reach their pinnacle per se. But these marginal ones, I mean, they might hit severe real quick, and we posted, and I mean, that can help. It can happen a little quicker sometimes than jumping in here. But again, this is not overwhelming here by any stretch of the imagination, but still noteworthy. We're on, again, we're kind of getting into the period now it's back to school where you're maybe hoping that these will kind of go away. We had the heat advisory in play. It's been warm. We've had that aspect with things as we're kind of just watching. You kind of start to expect these to not be as big of a factor here, back to school. I mean, nobody necessarily in school at 7 o'clock here in terms of the primary, secondary schools, and the colleges not really getting going too much in terms of classes anyway, the coursework yet. As we're looking here, you see some lightning though around this area, and that's something to be keeping tabs on. I'll try to pull up some traffic cameras there in a moment because those can be pretty impressive. But there's another storyline I want to touch on. I mean, there may be multiple. We're not, we're off from our film update here tonight, so we'll get into some other topics here in just a moment. But Tallahassee, we've been watching here. Pretty big deal tonight. FSU soccer, women's soccer, coming into play there in toward Leon County. There has been a delay because of inclement weather. It's against the Gators, so really getting things going here, right off the bat with a big rivalry there in toward Tallahassee. And the last update is that they were in a lightning delay. The game was originally scheduled to begin at 7, but it looks like action has deteriorated in a good way in terms of in that these storms have weakened. I know that's probably the wrong way to say that, but sometimes you can say deteriorated in terms of worsening conditions, but in this case, things have broken up. Is the way I'm kind of using that there, in terms of it's fallen apart here. So the accent's dwindling on down, but there still could be a rogue lightning strike in here, and maybe that's why they're kind of holding off a little bit as we're tracking things. But our system, let me turn off. There's one more lightning tracker I can put on here. Let me make sure it's on just in case something's popping. I saw one strike around midway there. Maybe they're kind of seeing that. Let me see what our weather stem sensor is showing here. I'm just going off of Twitter. I'm not sure. Sometimes, there's a chance at least that the game may be getting closer to getting started. I don't have a feed on that or anything right in front of me, but as we're tracking, let me just check their lightning sensor on the weather stem at FSU. Okay, they did to the northwest. It might have been that one area around Midway. I was kind of showing you. It was at 6:57 a strike, 6.62 miles away. It's clouded cloud, but that might be kind of the justification here. Just that one system I pulled up. Our other lightning trackers weren't picking it up, but our third one there, I have 3 different ways to look at it. It was kind of putting it on. There's a couple there just within that 8 miles, so I just trying to err on the side of caution here. So as we're tracking, as we're kind of watching things, that's just the rule, 8 miles generally. So even though it doesn't really look like a lot, there may just be, a situation here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, it's got to be on the side of caution, as we're tracking the scenario. So again, improving conditions here. So that's the good news as we're looking at this, as we're tracking this. I know we still got to be careful though with that one, strike that was showing up there about 10 minutes ago. So you just never know with that. But not really showing our system in a moment. I know right in the view real quick, I see a couple areas of interest, around Camilla and Georgia, some lightning whenever thunder roars go indoors. You see some here east of Fargo. You also see some south of Brunswick there. So we're watching that carefully. And then we're looking here toward Columbia County where we have the warning. The reason we jumped in here with the coverage, I know. Let me pull up some traffic cameras here. Let me go ahead and see what I can kind of pull on up as we're watching the scenario here. Just bear with me. I'm just trying to get the latest on in. Check power outages in Columbia County. See if we have any noteworthy values there. Only 5 customers out there right now, according to powerdata.us. Zooming around here. And getting right into town with this. Let's go right east of 75, right? It's far, close to it anyway. We can kind of get into the population and the downpours. I know we can't get cameras like right on the town roads, but this is a good shot of the situation. Let's pull it up here. This is, busy exit area. That vicinity. This is I-75 US 90 mile marker 427.4. So again, We're watching things here. You see the inclement conditions. And we're watching the situation evolve. You see folks, with those headlights on, they need to have them on, obviously. I mean, with these low visibility type of conditions, you're supposed to have one in the rain. And we're, within about, right on the bound of an hour of sunset here anyway, so you're already starting to lose some lighting as we're tracking things, despite, uh, I mean, it being still almost an hour away. We have these conditions here that are stormy, but then we also have a situation here where we have, the day coming to an end here in terms of the daylight hours. So again, just kind of giving you guys an idea of how it looks there. A little bit slower go there in Columbia County. I know, as we're looking ahead to like tomorrow night, especially, there's going to be those preseason high school football games here as we're looking. So we'll be, having to be mindful of the lighting for that. I mean, even if the games don't count, the lightning can still be very impactful and dangerous, obviously, and probably even a little bit more reason to just, in some cases, hopefully most will go off without a hitch, but some cases, have to just maybe cancel things even. Not saying we're going to have, every game like that. We're not. It's not a washout or anything, but I know in Georgia, I believe tomorrow is your first night, though, right, when you're getting the regular games going. So things kicking in the high gear up there towards South Georgia. So that weather very important for those contests as we're looking here and tracking things. Again, this is Lake C, severe thunderstorm warning effect there. Let me go ahead and jump away from that here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. We're just kind of trying to give you guys the latest here. Give you guys the latest here on what we're doing with. Let me go ahead and continue here to track things. We're going to go ahead and go to some different sources here, just checking some different things behind the scenes here in the Weather Center, obviously, about protecting you, your friends, and your family. I'm just trying to stay on top of things here. Let me go ahead and keep going here. Just trying to see what's going on here. We're still this warning in play. The severe characteristics, I don't see a whole bunch of those typical ones. There is a boundary in here. I mean, some gusty winds maybe outside of some of the downpours. So that's something to take note of there as we're looking, as we're tracking things. But I know we have a tornado warning in Minnesota right now. We'll pull that up real quick. As we're looking on the national picture, we see this there. Some radar indicated rotation up into lower parts of Lyon County, Minnesota. Let's also get out toward North Carolina. We had some water spout activity earlier on, and we had some concern out that way. Let's go ahead and loop this around. Bear with me, gonna load all those frames on in here. You see how we had those purple boxes earlier on. There was some concern. You see how we had this one right here, confirmed water spout. We had one before that, further back toward the west. I mean, confirmed water spout, which is, concerning. It could be still pretty weak. This is earlier around like Holden Beach, North Carolina, Ocean Isle Beach there. So that was earlier on now. We don't have that. We have some wind enhancement there on Carolina Beach. But again, just continuing to track all of that. Looks like our local warning has just gone away. So that's some good news as we're looking toward Columbia County. See some wind, not overwhelming though, around US 90. And we had some warnings around Duval County yesterday that we were posting about, and some of those surrounding zones as we were looking, as we were tracking things here, as we were trying to give you guys the latest. Just trying to keep you guys informed. Going through all the tools here in the toolkit, obviously. 7:17 on this Thursday evening. And I'm just trying to go through some stuff behind the scenes. We did have some reports yesterday here that we were looking at. Some different storm reports around the First Coast region. They were definitely noteworthy here as we were tracking things, toward that area. Just always got to be careful when you have these storms around. Whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors. Got to be mindful of all that here. Just so important to keep in mind. I know, just looking back at some of these reports yesterday, tree down a power, line there. As we were looking into toward the Arlington area, Jacksonville yesterday, 6 miles west southwest of UNF, tree down on power lines around Phillips Highway. So it's kind of a storyline as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. You can see here, over toward southeast Georgia, we have some of this lightning. Again, whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors. That's an important mantra here. I know we have this thunderstorm warning gone for Lake City, but let's check the rainfall. 1 hour rainfall, red area close to 2 inches. Storm total here, similar story. And so Lake City, in theory, some spots could get up to about 2 inches is what we're looking at now, but these storms are notoriously hard to predict here, something like that, hyper local level this time of year. But that's kind of what we're looking at on the, overall broad scale levels. But the Saxon would be more on a hyper local level in terms of the worst of this. So let's look at this camera. It's pretty windy on this, at least at times, on I-75. You can see here some of the axon, the tree, that's a tree that, not going to take much wind to blow there, and shot there as you're looking toward the right. But even, just the overall view, it's a breezy to windy picture there, and toward that part of I-75, mile marker 425.8. So kind of telling that story in that Florida 511 look at things. You just saw a flash there. Hopefully that was just lighting, not a power flash. But, as we're tracking things. That's kind of the storyline there. As we're giving you guys the very latest, obviously. Let's move away from that one. Just going to keep looking here at a couple more views. Just trying to effort the latest here. Let's pull this one up. I-75 mile marker 426.3. It's there where we have State Road 247. I'm going to try to tell that weather story from this viewpoint. Kind of trying to see what's going on there, obviously. As the situation evolves, you can see some of the planing potential, at least. Hopefully it doesn't happen for folks there, but you see some of that water there on the interstate, and that can lead to some issues, obviously. That was ponding, areas of water, ponding of water on the roadways. So, again, we're going to go ahead and move from that view there. Let me go ahead and keep looking at things, keep tracking things here in toward the Weather Center. I know it's just so important to stay on top of the meteorological situation. If there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home. I don't see any there on the different platforms from what I can see on my end, but overall view doesn't look like too much, but again, do have some areas of interest. You see here, Mississippi, we have a severe thunderstorm warning, a pretty big one there. They're tracking that out there, north central and northeastern Mississippi, including parts of Oktibbeha County. So it's to the west of Starkville, Mississippi there. And now some other topics to touch on. You see some computer models here. This is with our tropical storm Erin there. The E-name on the list as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Again, I've talked about it here a good bit. Tuesday night, we're still not too concerned with this, overall, especially not for our area. There are going to be, higher waves here in terms of, it's going to be some rough surf out there, but overall, locally, otherwise, not that big of a deal. That's obviously some good news here. Now, we will still watch for like from about North Carolina up because it's still a little early in the timeline to roll things out. You see the white dots, that's the 5-day track, and you can kind of tell it's making a turn. Now, more than likely, it's going to follow more like the pink, there, the pink dots, but in case, it nudges it further west a little bit and, gets closer to following the blue dots and then starts to curve, then that could be an issue further north, it could be coastal, or maybe even if it's not making landfall, we had some storms just brushed the coast over the years up there that have been a big deal as well. So, but for our area, it's about, rough surf, high surf, could be dangerously high surf in terms of, things could be kind of rough out there, even for those that are more experienced. It could be a little bit on the dangerous side in that regard. So, just got to be careful there. But we're not talking about storm surge or anything like that. It's two different things. Not talking about storm surge, even if the surf is high. You have that rough surf. That's something it's generally, it's not something that we're, you can have different effects here from, moon and the like, and that can kind of get that water running over roads like we've had in Charleston, South Carolina before. I'm not talking about that, but what I'm saying is overall we're not expecting the water to be running over the roads or anything like that with the situation. I mean, there could be those areas if you had a pattern like that. It's something they have to watch for with this because of that, magnify that. But this isn't a storm surge situation by any stretch of our area. That's for sure. It's just the surf there for those surfers. A lot of surfers may want to go out there, and if they're experienced, it could make for a good time. Just gotta still be careful. Could have the rip currents, depending on how this kind of, evolves here. We'll have to see. It could be pretty small but powerful hurricane here. Let's pull up the infrared. You can see it's really starting to organize. I mean, that's really getting its act together in terms of that organization here. Now, those are really cold cloud tops. I mean, 4 hours ago, it's been getting there, but it's getting even more and more organized. So it's going to develop. They'll be watching in Puerto Rico here. It's expected to stay pretty far north, but they're still kind of, they're not in the cone of concern, but they're not that far away. So they got to be paying attention. There is a tropical storm watch there in play now for St. Martin there, and some of that is areas, and as we're looking toward the Netherlands, tropical storm watch for some areas there, as we're talking about areas, under their control anyway. So just something to kind of keep in mind here as we're tracking things. Again, just trying, the Netherlands, obviously, itself, the land area that you think about, it's not that area by any stretch, but they have some different areas there that are under their control. So, I know, as we're tracking things like, we're just kind of watching some of those areas out there in toward those island regions. So, again, that's kind of the storyline there. As we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. Not areas that you really talk about too much here on our local weather, that is for sure. But, they're in proximity to areas, that, would, if you follow the cone, they're not in the cone. And, maybe Puerto Rico gets under a tropical storm watch over here. We'll have to wait and see for that. But some of these areas to the south, is where I'm talking. These are island areas, and they're, different countries control these. As we're looking this is the U.S. here. So, again, but some of the other areas are actually, as we're looking further east, as I look here at some of the information, Meteorological Service of France or the Netherlands, those are some of their different, regions there in terms of the meteorology. The Northern Leeward Islands is what we're calling this here overall, though. That's the more, broad geographic grouping. So, again, as we're watching this, and now we do have another area to watch that we haven't touched too much on. Some of the models are picking up on now. This is what I'm noting, because if we get a tropical storm out of this, we may have to, if it makes landfall toward Brownsville, we may have to do a cut-in tomorrow here as we're looking at, as we're tracking things. It's not a tropical storm right now. The hurricane hunters have been out there. And as of the last update, they said there's now a 40% chance of this developing. as we're tracking things. So could become a tropical depression, or it could have strengthened all the way to a tropical storm as we're looking at things, and that would be the next name on the list there. And the way I believe it's pronounced is Fernon. So that's the F name on the list. I know there's some weird pronunciations sometimes, and that if you saw it on our other graphic, you would not think it's pronounced like that. That is for sure, because I'll go ahead and pull it up from our graphic source here. As we're tracking things. I mean, you see the F name on the list, Fernon. I mean, that's not how you would think that's pronounced, but that's how the Hurricane Center is pronouncing that. So, what we're dealing with right now, we have Aaron that's, got a lot of hype for our area. I don't think you really need it. It's going to be rough surf out there. That's the storyline. We're going to watch further up. Probably it's going to stay further east, even up North Carolina and New York and the like, but we'll still watch up there a little more carefully. It's too far out to, kind of rule things out for sure up that way. So, as we're looking, I know we have the additional hurricane supplies, tax-free, time frame here continuing. Right now, it's permanent. As we're tracking things, that's some good news there. Things like batteries now tax-free, as far as we can look into the future. So, you see there, Aaron's what we have, the next system, whatever it is, Fernon there, and then after that we have our G name on the list here. As we're looking and as we're tracking things in toward the tropics there, and we'll be watching to see where that is. I mean, it's a situation where we'll be paying attention, because I was talking about maybe it's something else. We talked about Lake Houston, another system a couple weeks. Could be an issue here that we'll have to watch, but we're not going to have any local direct land impacts there from Aaron, and then we'll see what else develops. But could have Fernon or Texas, could be another different system. It gets that name, we'll see. And then after that, we have the D name on the list there. So that would be the Gabrielle or Gabrielle there as you're looking at things. And then, so I think it'd be Gabrielle, since that would be, the way these names rotate here. It goes in this pattern here. And there's the even seasons. It would start out different. It would be male, female, and the like. This here it goes female, male, and that pattern. So Aaron there is a female name. Fernan is a male name. So we're talking about Gabrielle would be a female name. As we're looking, but as we're tracking things here. Umberto there, as we're looking, that's how they have it. I know I've pronounced it Umberto before, but on the official list, they're calling it Umberto in terms of how we're supposed to pronounce it. The Hurricane Center has a guide for this here, folks. So I'm not just making this up, but that was a big storm years ago. It popped up suddenly toward eastern Texas, western Louisiana, had an impact in 2007, as these get reused every 6 years unless they're retired. So, we'll be watching, we'll be tracking things here in toward the Weather Center as we're kind of looking at the overall meteorological pictures. So, we're just trying to keep you guys up to date here on what's going on for sure. It's just always important to stay stocked up just in case things happen here. Hopefully you don't need, the supplies here, but I'm going to pull it in off our other source real quick. This is the official pronunciation guide, folks. As we're talking about the tropics. So this is not something I don't know, it's something I've had on my, desk to make sure I'm reading things right. But this is how we're supposed to pronounce them according to the Hurricane Center, the different names. Here we go. This is the graphic directly from them on the other source. So there you go. This is just the file. I mean, this is a, kind of a, rough way to sew up, but there you go. You can see that's how we're supposed to pronounce the names as we're looking, as we're tracking things, to try to convey that message there a little bit, more clearly to the viewer. So you see how and it says the names as well, because these are all set, because you're not, as we're looking here, like 2030's names here, as we're looking on this list. These are the names from last year, except for a few that will retire, because the B name, that was Beryl. Not anymore. That got retired, but Debbie's back. Had that one here twice already in the last, going back 2012, 2024. You see, as we're looking here, of course, we did have also Helene retired. That got replaced with Holly. And Milton, that got replaced by Miguel. So again, and of course, Beryl there replaced by Brianna. So this is how we're supposed to pronounce them. That's why sometimes I kind of just want to check this before I say them. But, these are our names here in 2025 right here. I'll go ahead and highlight all this. This is directly from the Hurricane Center's information. So this is kind of trying to give you guys an understanding of what we're dealing with here in terms of meteorology and, in terms of the nomenclature here for the viewers. So let's go ahead and jump back to another source here if we can. So you're looking there toward the tropics. Just trying to give you the latest. Let me go ahead and see where else I want to go. I'm probably going to wrap it up soon. Don't see any questions or comments here right now. See if we get an update here. I'll wait a couple more minutes see if we get an update on that system in the Gulf there. See if this organizes. I mean, right now it doesn't look that organized, but let's go back 4 hours. Ooh, that was more organized then with more colder cloud tops. Radar was starting to pick up some stuff from Brownsville, but it does look a little weaker right now. So it's just because it's getting closer. We're gonna have some rain around there tomorrow. That's the storyline. Because we had that remnant, the B name this year. It's just so tragic. Barry's remnant there. After rolling that horrific flooding there in central Texas and the hill country. Camp Mystic and the like, all those fatalities, all those children lost. It's so tragic. So many children losing their life there. And toward that central Texas flooding, it was partly to blame, was a remnant there. The remnant of Tropical Storm Barry. It wasn't even, I don't believe, a tropical storm when it hit Mexico. It was several days after the fact. So pretty odd situation there. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. You see a marine warning off of the southeast Georgia coast there. That light green. Check that light blue box there. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things on the picture, on the screen there. As we're trying to give you the latest. I know it's been hot. That's been a storyline around here today. You can see, look how hot it is toward Texas. But then even around here, it's been pretty toasty. Some of these areas cooling off because of the storm ax and the cloud cover. We're still at 90, though, on my thermometer. It's historic. Some areas, though, not the case with that as we go ahead and pull radar back in 12-hour rainfall. Quite a few areas getting some rain. Look at areas there in Madison County, almost 4 inches in the 12 hours in terms of the view, how this goes back there. But so that's kind of intriguing to see as we're tracking things. Let me go ahead and check any updates maybe with FSU soccer there. Okay, so they are now going to be able to play that game at 8 o'clock instead of 7 now. FSU against Florida. It's a regular game. Women's soccer there, getting going. It's finally game week, first game of the year. And it's against the Florida Gators there at the Seminole Soccer Complex. Again, it was supposed to start at 7, but now expected to start at 8 o'clock after that hour-long delay is what it looks like it's going to be. As you're seeing the ax in there, in terms of the meteorology, clear on up there, the meteorological picture. I know my Seminoles, this is like the probably, unless I'm thinking, wrong here. This is probably the first FSU sporting event that counts, not just an exhibition of the fall period, fall semester. Now that school, hadn't had classes start yet, neither one of them. But getting going there with a rivalry right off the top, that's important. Volleyball, women's volleyball, pretty quick, in terms of just behind this here, in terms of that fall sports calendar as we're tracking things. That's intriguing. And, something that we're going to be watching here for. In terms of everything, in terms of those sports, I know it's already time. 2025, 2026 sports here getting going here at 8 o'clock on the ACC network. That's exciting. Yeah, women's volleyball gets going there pretty quick. Exhibitions, coming up next weekend, and the games start, looks like they're toward August 29th. Of course, football, we'll be watching that weather, for that big game against Alabama. It's on August 30th at 3:30 on ABC against Alabama. Alabama's now, team that's highly ranked. I know, going back to 2023, I don't want to go on it too much here on the severe weather cut-in. I mean, we're, pretty much past our severe concern, but, that was one of the debates there. The main debate should have been FSU Alabama for the college football playoff in 2023. Well, this game does not mean anything in comparison to that debate. Obviously, FSU should have been in the college football playoff there. They were the team that hadn't lost. Alabama, they lost by 10 there, against Texas. I believe that was a home game. We're having to look back pretty far at this point to bring that up. But, they had struggled with USF. I mean, they barely beat the Bulls there in Nick Saban's final season with the Crimson Tide. Since then, Alabama, they didn't do all that great last year, but they still did better than FSU. And then this year, right now, FSU, and Alabama, Alabama, they have a pretty highly touted quarterback in there, and FSU a transfer. We'll just have to kind of see how things go with that. I would think Alabama would get the better of FSU at this point. First game you never know, but, Alabama, this game has no bearing on that debate. FSU should have been in, even if FSU loses by 30 points next weekend, which I don't think is out of the question, against a team like Alabama who, all that top talent coming in there, and FSU coming off a 2-10 season. They'll be better than 2-10, but I just don't, it's just going to be hard. It's going to take, I know it can be happening quick because of the transfer portal. Look at teams, like Indiana last year making the college football playoff. Arizona State, in the quarterfinals there. And you can turn things around quick, but will be quick enough to beat Alabama in week 1? Probably not. It's probably going to be a game that gets out of hand there. Maybe not 30 points, but Alabama probably going to win that one pretty easy, unfortunately, for my Noles. I mean, we got to be honest here, but back in 2023, even with Tate Rodemaker, FSU would have won that game there. If they had to play Alabama, but, that was not going to be a game. That was just a debate. But they would have got things done there in that college football playoff. Anyway, what you can tell me talking about that, it says the weather's clearing on up. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, you can see the St. Johns River, we got some lightning around there, right around downtown Jacksonville. So whenever thunder roars, go indoors. Wonder if they have a Jacksonville jumbo shrimp game going on right now there or not. Because if so, they need to be inside there, do folks in toward that area. So let me check on that right now. There was supposed to be a game there against the Norfolk Tides there. So let me see if they've started that one real quick. Check on that, because hopefully they're in a lightning delay. Hoping for everybody's sake here that they're in a lightning delay as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Because it would not be safe to be out there with that lightning in that area. Right around downtown Jacks. That minor league baseball action. As we're looking at things there. Just kind of trying to look at things, to be quite honest here, on my end on the fly. Just bear with me here. Just gonna see if they're going. Hopefully they're not, because there's lightning around downtown Jacks. Okay, they are in a delay because of rain. They did start to play in the first inning. 3-0 lead there for Norfolk there. against Jacksonville at VyStar Ballpark. But in a delay, rain, lightning, at least they're in a delay there. That's where they need to be in, obviously, in toward that area with that. And earlier in the last couple months or so, they actually were playing after a strike of lightning, right? In that area. So that's why I just wanted to double check with that as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. As you're looking here, Southwest Georgia, you can see some lightning there. Again, just be careful. Any outdoor activities, football practice, anywhere around our area. Just gotta be careful here. Most of this accident, like around Lake City, is really broken up, which is great news, obviously. Great news, as we're looking at Ward Columbia County, we're always watching things for our 62 counties here. We're always giving you guys the very latest on the situation as we're looking out there toward that area. We're going to go ahead and look at things, on all the different modes. We're just trying to keep you guys up to date here on what's happening meteorologically. Don't see any new tropical weather outlook yet. I was hoping we'd get an update for what's going on toward the Gulf there with, let's see where they determined that. I think they were determined that Invest 98, Invest 98L. So looking there around the Bay of Campeche. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things, kind of moving up closer toward Brownsville. You see a lot of the convection actually on the northern side. So southern Texas is going to get some rain from this. As we're looking, as we're tracking there, maybe, a little bit further north even based on what I'm seeing with our different icons in terms of the moisture. Sometimes these systems, whether they're tropical or not, named or not, they're disorganized, they can kind of provide that rainfall. That is for sure. And a national picture got wildfire accident, unfortunately, in a ward like Oregon right now. We hate seeing that. Some evacuations ordered, it looks like, up there from a fire there. It's called the Heather Fire there. So Medford, Oregon office watching that for sure. Let me see, is that technically, it may just be technically in California. Okay, it is, even though they cover that area. Technically, that fire is just in the far northern California. And then, as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, I know in southern Texas, so where we're at, you go from that extreme to the other, there's a flood watch for areas there around the Brownsville, Rio Grande Valley Weather Service office area. A couple counties under that, it looks like we do have parts there, that region, like in Hidalgo County and Cameron County there, under a flood watch because of some of the moisture coming on in there as we're looking ahead in the timeline from that Invest, toward the tropical picture. So that's something to watch. A4 not really picking up on it, which is, sometimes you have stuff right at the edge of the, U.S. view here. Some of the systems, southern Texas, sometimes the models aren't going to pick up great on things. Let me check some of the other models. They're barely picking anything up, which is kind of alarming. There's a flood watch, so there's concern here whether the models are picking stuff up or not. Got to watch there in the far southern Texas. Check the European model. Not really seeing a lot there on that, but I'm going through all the different models. There's probably more moisture down there than what I'm seeing. Almost everything's going really low. But there's a flood watch because there is, accident there in the Gulf. It's just not being picked up in the grid as it could maybe because of where it is. So definitely could have some gusty winds there. Sun winds, sustained around 35 miles an hour coming in there around Brownsville at 2 o'clock tomorrow. So it'll be even just north of, Port Isabel, give or take. So, and years ago we had I think it was in the late 90s. I want to say we had a hurricane come across in here. And it was a powerful one, but they got lucky because it was, direct hit was on the less populated areas there. One of the more sparsely populated areas you'll see in, coastal part of the country. As we're tracking things. Talking about, I think the late 90s there, but doing it off the top of my head. But as we're going, tracking things here. See if there's any questions or comments. Just checking things here. Just checking all the different sources. Make sure I'm not missing anything. So again, just watching things, tracking things here. Look at some of the different comments. I need to get one of those off there because just trying to make sure everything's secure on things. But again, I'm just trying to keep you up to date. And that's going to do it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be continuing to track things. No formal update tonight. And we still have to watch these afternoon storms like what we jumped in for. In terms of the weather picture, it's always important to keep an eye on things here. Meteorologically, I know 40% chance, give or take. I don't have the full forecast up to date, but as we're looking toward that Friday there, some storms possible. But as we get into that weekend, I had 40 for tomorrow. That's what I'm seeing some of the models. But as Saturday, Sunday roll around, rain chances will increase some. So keep that in mind. We have to watch out for some more moisture around here locally. So that'll be something to be mindful of as we're tracking the overall meteorological picture. So just keep that in mind. We'll just some of that as you get into that next work week, school week there, full school week. I would think for most as we're looking at things and tracking things here, obviously. So just trying to check all of our different sources. You see the platforms rolling. Of course, on YouTube there, we're on Twitter/X, Facebook there, Twitch. You have Clutter.com that gives you all the latest, obviously, all the different links there, plus Interactive Radar there as well. So very important to keep an eye on things here. Gotta stay cool with all this heat around too. Make sure, especially getting a different routine, make sure you're checking that back seat of your car. Do not, if you're supposed to drop a young person off at daycare or something, do not forget them, back there, because if you just leave them in the car for a few minutes, it could be deadly because it's just so hot. A little bit more storms, a little more heat than you'd like to see as we're getting back into that pattern with the schools, getting going as primary and secondary schools. You see some lighting around downtown Jax there on the screen. You gotta be careful with that electrical energy. I know, I believe Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp there, it was gonna be, I guess it was. Just double checking some things here. I know chief meteorologist at one of the stations in Jacksonville was going to throw out the first pitch there tonight at that baseball game, minor league baseball game there, one of the TV stations in Jacksonville. And they did get, into that first inning, so that was able to happen, I would think. But then the weather kind of come on in there and, played a role with things. And, that's just how it is. You got to be always erring on the side of caution there with the meteorology as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. So. See some storms in Mississippi real quick there. Some nasty weather around like Ottawa County. Mississippi, I'm not sure if the students are back there yet in Starkville, but they're probably getting pretty close. I think UCF students are moving in here today from what I was seeing. As I know they're getting going here pretty soon. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. Just kind of looking at things an hour earlier out there in the word. Mississippi, obviously. Just looking here. The classes begin on the 20th, so yeah, they're probably starting to, get in there next Wednesday. That means what, that would be in terms of the calendar. So folks, especially like maybe off campus, especially like getting in there, and gotta be careful with the lighting around. So gotta keep that in mind. But back local. don't have too much for riding downtown Jax. There's some lighting, some inclement weather, dangerous weather there with some lightning impacting some minor league baseball. So that's the storyline there. We're going to wrap it. Have a great night. We'll be back here if warranted, obviously, and we'll be watching the area in the Gulf. If that starts to get going into a name system, let me see if we got an update, because they're getting closer to 8. They're probably really trying to evaluate things for this report. This is very unusual, honestly, not to have an update yet. This close to 8 o'clock with the Hurricane Center. They have the hunters. Let me see. We may have, we haven't had to do this too much this season yet. We may have some data here I can pull up. I'm going to go ahead and try this. Bear with me. We're going to try to pull this up. Let's see. Recon. Oh, it's in there and it's not showing. Okay. So I see some stuff coming across. The source here. As we're tracking things. Okay, I do see that. And maybe that's where we're at. Let me go ahead and move this over. Instead of no aircraft, but I don't think we're seeing that on here. But they just sent out an advisory for Aaron, and that it is almost a hurricane now. We just got that in up to 70-mile-an-hour winds now. So almost, to that hurricane. Gonna have our first hurricane in the Atlantic Basin here in 2025, maybe the next few hours. I mean, as we're looking ahead and as we're tracking things here, because all the other names so far, first 4 all tropical storms in the Atlantic, but this one's expected and going to definitely be a hurricane, probably a major hurricane, very powerful hurricane. It could be, as we're looking here, a Cat 3 maybe, some of them will take it to a Cat 4 points, but again, it's expected to stay, away from Puerto Rico, definitely going to stay away from our area with the direct impacts. That's the good news. Again, rough surf and the like, got to be careful there. But as we're looking at it, expected to kind of stay off the mid-Atlantic northeast coast, but that's still a little bit in question. We got to watch that here still a little bit. That's not a guarantee here yet in terms of the meteorology. So that's something we'll continue to evaluate here. As you have the infrared satellite on locally, but as we pull that off, I know as you track things here. Okay, we did just get the TWO now, the Tropical Weather Outlook. Okay, they now went up to 50% for the Gulf here. So let me go ahead and see what we got. Okay, let me read this. So, Invest 98L, recent geostationary and microwave satellite imagery indicates that solar and thunderstorm activity is showing some signs of organization with a small area of low pressure located over the southwestern Gulf. An area of, an early Air Force reconnaissance mission found that the system lacks a water-defined low-level circulation, and then low is forecast to move west-northwest to northwestward across the western Gulf during the next day or so. And environmental conditions appear favorable generally for further development. Tropical depression could form before the system moves inland over northeastern Mexico or southern Texas by late Friday. Regardless of development, though, locally heavy rainfall is possible along portions there of northeastern Mexico and, into southern Texas over the next few days. And another Air Force reconnaissance, Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft is scheduled to investigate the system tomorrow morning. There's a 50% chance it develops before it makes landfall into, tropical cyclone, maybe a tropical depression, maybe a brief named storm even there toward Brownsville tomorrow, making landfall tomorrow. A weak, tropical storm, not out of the question. A weak named storm, not out of the question there. So that's the, it's a coin toss now. 50-50. May have, that means if we get a tropical storm, maybe not a depression, but an actual tropical storm coming across there, you may have to cut in here real quick. This is around 1 o'clock Central Time tomorrow, coming across there around Brownsville. That chance going up, it was not that high, but, even earlier, it was 40 earlier on today. I mean, I believe it was 20 when we were on Tuesday night of this developing before it hit. So it's going up. So that's the storyline there. As we're tracking things, I know there's quite a few different flash flood warnings. There's so many of them in the country this year. There's one right now. We had, flooding around Chattanooga the other day. They're on, Tuesday night. We have a flash flood warning in Tennessee right now, southwest of Waynesboro. As you see that there. That's the storyline. So quite a bit going on. They're not huge stories, but they're worth talking about, if that makes sense, and kind of going a little along with it, even here with this severe weather cut in. But, you know, we were watching Lake City, that threat has dwindled down. That's what we moved along, but didn't have, you know, and we're not going to do a formal update here tonight, but there's just so much going on. Let's go ahead and kind of go a little on form there with some of these weather topics. Have a great night. Stay safe. Back here, you know, as needed. May have to cut back in tomorrow if we have something around, you know, southern Texas there making landfall. That could be an issue for folks as we're monitoring things there with the meteorological picture. Stay safe.